Utah has become the first state in 2023 to ban gender-affirming care for minors. Republican Governor Spencer Cox signed a bill Saturday to restrict minors' access to the following gender cares that's being restricted: puberty blockers, hormones, and surgical procedures. So the Hill did some reporting on this new law. So the law will require medical providers starting July 1st to consider whether alternative medical treatments to gender-affirming care would provide a minor with the quote best long-term outcome. It will also require them to identify and document any physical or mental health condition and consider if treating those conditions before providing the care will give them the best outcome. So now I have some more information on this, but I just want to stop there and say this. It won't. There doesn't need to be, extensively further research onto this. We've done the research. People who are qualified to do the research have done the research. And that research all shows, which is why this is best practices for doctors now, that providing gender-affirming care to trans youth and to trans adults creates the best long-term outcomes. It drastically reduces depression in those people. It drastically reduces rates of suicidality. We know what the best possible care we can be providing for these people is. So this bill is attempting to justify, essentially limiting trans rights in this country with this completely fabricated idea that we don't know if it's the best practice. We know it's the best practice, so don't buy their BS for 1 second. And I'm not the only person giving backlash to this bill. There's lots of groups out there voicing their backlash against it. So back to the reporting from The Hill. The LGBTQ Victory Institute, which works to increase LGBTQ representation in government, condemned the ban in a release. They said it's a quote symptom of gaps in LGBTQ representation in government. And to that point, Utah has only one openly LGBTQ state lawmaker. So this is not the only ban of this type. It's the first, but there's some coming down the road. So it's the first in the wave of efforts to restrict transgender care. So let's look at some of those. Axios reported, and we can look at this headline, that there are 11 states considering bills to restrict transgender health care. So more from their report. More than 24 bills targeting transgender health care have been introduced at the start of 2023 state legislative sessions. The new bills come after 2022 saw a wave of anti-transgender legislation nationwide, with at least 34 states introducing more than 145 anti-trans bills. So I have a little more information on why their argument that this is to protect children, that these are all in efforts to protect children, is absolutely farcical. But Jessica, first I want to bring you in and just hear your thoughts on this rampant attack on the transgender community.
Yeah, there are so many other things you could be making legislation about, maybe delivering public goods for a change, talking about having better infrastructure in the United States where it's crumbling, maybe providing better schools for the children to go to. Instead, they want to make paternalistic laws that don't actually protect children. And yeah, I'm excited to talk more about that after we get through this.
Yep, so mentioned they're not actually trying to protect children. And we saw this tweet that I think really provides some evidence to that point. So this account tweeted out that Utah banned gender-affirming healthcare for minors and purposefully did not include breast augmentations for cis teen girls in that ban. Ironic that these ghouls would call trans people groomers while saying that grooming cisgender teen girls to cater to pedophilic patriarchy is okay. Now I know that that tweet doesn't have any further information to support that, but we did check it out, and that account was absolutely correct. So we can look at the language from this law that says that it's banning these types of care for an individual whose biological sex at birth is male, breast augmentation surgery, chest feminization surgery, or facial feminization surgery, or for an individual whose biological sex at birth is female, mastectomy, breast reduction surgery, chest masculinization surgery, or facial masculinization surgery. So explicitly carved out from that are cisgender young girls who are seeking breast augmentation surgery. So it's okay for people to get these types of surgeries so long. It's okay for young girls to get these surgeries so long as it is playing to male fetish. But God forbid a trans child who has, gone through, suffered through this discrimination that trans people disproportionately face in this country, wants to pursue a course of healthcare so that their outward appearance can match who they are. That's not okay. But if a 14-year-old girl, we are totally okay with her augmenting her body in a way that pleases the male eye. I mean, it's disgusting and it's brazen. And I also just want to point out that they ban for people who were female at birth mastectomies. There are a lot of people who at young ages realize that they are high risk for breast cancer. And you don't really see too many of those surgeries at under 18, but a lot of cis women choose to have mastectomies as a preventative measure from getting breast cancer. So that would also be banned by this law. They do not care about protecting people. They care about discriminating against trans people, and it's absolutely disgusting. Jessica?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Same party, Ron DeSantis and the like, that's saying parents get to choose how to raise their kids. Talking about the rainbow flags being around, right? You don't want them exposed to LGBTQ plus ideas. You don't want the idea that they could grow up to be gay put in their heads from a very young age. You don't want to teach them critical race theory because apparently you want to raise your kids to be racist and uphold the racist institutions that you love so much. But if a parent wants to affirm their child's gender identity, they won't allow for that. So you think parents should have every right to raise their kids however they want, so long as it abides by your traditional values and beliefs. There are so many different ways parents can psychologically mess up their kids. They can force their kids to partake, at the lower end of the spectrum as far as severity. You could make your kid play soccer, play sports they don't want to play, and grow up to be a soccer player, right? You can make your kid affirm with the Catholic Church, and now they're a Catholic. On the more severe end, right? You could sign up your child who's a minor to be a child actor or a child model, right? That has consequences later down the line for sure. You could also sign up your child or sign away your child off as a spouse when they're a minor, as early as the age of 16 in Utah. This is legal in 43 states, but for some reason, the conservatives don't care at all about this. They never talk about child marriage, and yet they label transgender people and drag queens as groomers. In Utah, this is especially a problem. Having child brides, that is going to mess up their life forever. And moreover, it's oftentimes not a decision they're even equipped to make. And yet you're going to say, you know what, our focus is actually going to be a child identifying with a certain gender. So you think they can't possibly know their own gender, but they can choose a husband or a wife? It doesn't make any sense at all.
No, absolutely not. And I do just want to, one last thing I want to highlight before we wrap up the story. They've banned puberty blockers. And of course, their justification is that these aren't tested, but puberty blockers specifically have been tested for decades, almost over half a century. They've been giving them not just to trans children, but to people with precocious puberty or individuals with other sort of endocrine issues. They've been tested for a long time. And what we know is that the effects of puberty blockers are almost entirely reversible, but the effects of puberty are not. So you are now causing trans people to have to wait till later in life to get access to gender affirming care when they've already experienced the puberty of their assigned sex. And they can't fully undo that. So you're just causing further issues down the road. But of course, the end game of this is to ban all gender affirming care, not just for children, but for everybody. And we heard Matt Walsh say that. We've heard all of these, children's rights, protect the children people. That is the aim of this. And we need to sound the alarm now because this is a civil rights issue. And if we don't stand up against this, it's just going to get so much worse.